right, everybody, welcome. I'm excited you're here. I see people still trickling on. I'm going to go ahead and get started at the top of the hour. We like to stay on schedule. I know y'all have other places to be, but we are thrilled to have you here for the Kentucky Product Development Initiative webinar. So thank you so much for joining. We're going to be going over a lot today. I'm going to be doing a lot of talking. So I'm going to try to be as engaging as possible as you can be about grant application materials, but we're thrilled to have you here. I think that SSG kind of feels like we've become honorary Kentucky citizens and appreciate y'all letting us come into you via Zoom. So today, really, the point of the webinar today is to talk a little bit about the Product Development Initiative, talk about, what happened in 2020 and why we're excited about 2021. We're going to just kind of run through a few things. I'm excited to kick it off with a message from the governor, who has really put an eye on this program. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about 2021 is just some really renewed excitement and momentum around the program. So excited to do that. We'll also just kind of talk, if you're new to the PDI program, we're going to be talking through who is Site Selection Group and why are we kind of leading the charge. We are very excited to have been engaged, and I'll go back up, by Kentucky Association for Economic Development in partnership with the Team Kentucky, the Cabinet for Economic Development. So excited to have these two partners with us today. I know that Matt Tackett is on the webinar, and we also have Christina Slattery. So in just a minute, I'll let Christina kind of chime in and give a couple of words from the Cabinet's perspective on the program. So we're excited to have her here. We're going to go over the program, talk about some success stories that we saw over the last two rounds and changes for 21 as we kick off the third round of the PDI program. We'll also be going over kind of schedule and key checkpoints as it relates to funding and kind of process. So we'll go through that as well. A couple of housekeeping items. There is a chat window. There's also a question and answer window. Please feel free to use either of them. We've got some team members kind of monitoring those and happy to answer questions. If you want to, jot them in as we go, we'll reserve some time at the end of the program to run through some of those questions. So please feel free to use those features. And the more questions we have, the more engaging this will be. So please feel free to chime in. So this is the PDI kind of dream team. We've got a lot more folks who are very integral to this process, but for the most part, you'll be dealing with myself as the main point of contact. Josh Bays and Chris Schwinden, Christina, to your point earlier, they're out in the field right now as well with the project, and they regret that they're not able to join today. But we've also got Matt Tackett, who leads the charge from KAED standpoint. And then we have Commissioner Jeff Taylor and Deputy Commissioner Christina Slattery, who's joining us today. So Christina, I'm going to kick it off with a message from the governor, and then I'll let you kind of chime in with a few words as well. And again, I'm excited to kind of have this message come to you through Zoom and just kind of shows and gives you a brief introduction. We're going to go into more detail about what the Product Development Initiative is and why it's important. But we're going to kick it off with a message from the governor first. Let me know if you can't hear it.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for your time today. Across our beautiful state, Team Kentucky is actively building a better future. It's a better, more vibrant future for our residents and our communities. We're making strides on so many fronts, from education to wages to retirement and healthcare. Our vision to build a better Kentucky is why today I want to highlight for you the latest round of the Kentucky Product Development Initiative. As you know, Kentucky competes to attract jobs and investments from businesses across the United States and around this world. We compete and many times win when we strike that balance of location, workforce, cost, and quality of life, not to mention preparation and speed to market. Those are factors most in our control to differentiate ourselves from our competition. Preparation and speed to market are what the Product Development Initiative is all about. For several years now, we've partnered on PDI with the Kentucky Association for Economic Development and a leading group of utilities. The program puts funding on the table to further prepare Kentucky's sites and buildings. In advancing these sites and buildings in communities across the state, PDI helps us maintain the ability to quickly get companies located, hiring, and open. Now, as we launch the latest round of PDI, I ask that you participate. Invest yourselves and your communities in this opportunity. In addition to potentially receiving funds for site and building improvement, communities participating in PDI receive a report and a one-on-one consultation with the professionals at Site Selection Group. That consultation provides tailored insight and actionable intel for your organization. The knowledge Kentucky communities can gain from participating in PDI can make the difference between winning a project and coming in second. By preparing ourselves and our communities, we can compete for higher wage jobs. Those better paying jobs will go further in supporting our families, our education and training systems, and our economy overall. I can't thank you enough for your commitment to making our state a top choice location for business investment. As well, let me give a huge thank you to the Kentucky Association for Economic Development and the state's major utilities that continue to support PDI. I look forward to your continued teamwork in helping to build a better Kentucky for years to come.
All right. So again, the product development initiative, just to kind of get to the punchline, this is a product development program where we are helping the state of Kentucky kind of elevate their game, make sure that we have as many sites with as much due diligence and with as much site prep work and infrastructure ready to go, as much of that as possible, so that the state of Kentucky can be more competitive in the economic development recruitment process. We're going to talk a lot about how we try to take a holistic approach to product development. We try to leverage this program for a lot more than just the dirt. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but I thought maybe Christina, you might want to chime in just from the cabinet's perspective on how y'all see this program.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I don't know that I can say it much better than the governor has, but thank you again to all of the communities that have participated in the first and second round and that are on today. Thank you to KAED for continuing to be such a good partner, to the utility partners that really have stepped up to, help to fund this initiative and the site selection group. Everyone has been wonderful to work with. And, every single round, in my opinion, is going to continue to get better and better because we're learning each time, we're pivoting, we're trying to be more flexible, seeing what's working and what's not working. And really the cabinet, our commitment is that not only do we have funds set aside to support this third round, but you're going to see our business development team more engaged in the process earlier on, so that if there are questions about eligibility for funding or other items, that we can be right there, alongside Beth and team to answer those sooner. So, again, happy to be here, and I'll be on for questions along the way, Beth, if you need any assistance. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Christina. Very good. So again, that's the team. Let's give you a quick introduction to Site Selection Group. I will make this brief. If you're not familiar with Site Selection Group, we are a location advisory firm. We help companies choose where to locate. We do that, through the location, kind of advising on go or no-go decisions, on logistics analysis, market filtering, the physical real estate, where this program really kind of comes into play. But also we're, a consulting group for workforce concerns, tax structure, economic incentive negotiations, and incentive compliance. So kind of based on our corporate experience of helping companies choose where to locate, we are also, from time to time engaged by groups like KAED and the cabinet to perform some economic development consulting work. And really, it's just, I think sometimes it's nice to have somebody with a briefcase kind of come into town and give you a fresh perspective. Sometimes we're confirming things that you already know. Sometimes we're helping you kind of rethink the property and how that could kind of be reshaped from a target industry perspective. And we'll talk more about kind of the specific outcomes of the program as well. But that's just kind of a high level view of what we do. We are located, we've got our headquarters in Dallas, Texas. We're about 50 people or so. It changes daily. So we've got a rapidly growing office in Dallas, Texas. We've got a couple folks in Austin. We've got our Greenville, South Carolina office, which is where I'm located. And we just had a new hire with Dewey Evans, and we're excited that he's on today as well. And then we've got, a couple folks up in New York. So we really cover the lower 48 a lot with our corporate location advisory work, although we've done a lot of work in the last couple of years, especially in Mexico and some even in Canada. But for the most part, we do a lot of work in the lower 48 and really concentrate a lot on that kind of southeastern corridor. Kentucky right now is hot on our corporate side. Obviously from a logistics perspective, you can't really get too much closer to the center of the kind of gravity when it comes to the population. So Kentucky's been a great state. We've seen a lot of activity there and excited to kind of help y'all as you elevate your product in the state. This is that obligatory slide of clients that every single consultant has. You have to justify yourself somehow. But this is our list of clients. This is just a sample list of our clients. We are very proud of our clients. We work very hard to make sure they're making smart choices. And again, we're really have a diverse mix. We do a lot of manufacturing and industrial. We've got a headquarters and call center focus. And we've also got some folks that, specialize on the data center side. So we've really got a very wide variety, and we really try to staff along the value chain of the site selection process. Again, here's just a representation of some of those kind of state, regional, community level folks that have engaged us. And in this case, we're here with these two fine groups of people. So excited to be here on their behalf. Structurally, from an organization standpoint, Josh and Chris are very involved with the Kentucky PDI program. I tend to be the main point of contact. So if you have any questions and you want to direct those to someone, feel free to reach out to anybody on the slide, but I'm happy to be a liaison. We've also got a great team kind of supporting us through the process as well. So let's talk about the program. Why are we here? This program was established in 2019, originally with the goal to kind of disseminate grant funds. And through the process, we've really tried to take a holistic approach. A lot of times these site readiness programs or grant programs really focus on the site readiness, and sometimes they can be done in a vacuum. So as we worked with KAED and with the cabinet, we said, let's make sure we tackle this piece of the puzzle. That's fundamental, but we have to think about all these other things as well. Because, at the end of the day, your workforce should have a physical impact on how your property is developed. Your access to utilities and logistics are critical, and again, help shape your target industries that you go after. Let's think about, who we are and who we're not from an operating cost perspective. Obviously, some of the more rural communities are going to target different types of companies than some of the more urban communities across Kentucky. And we've accounted for that in our process. And we can talk more about that in a little bit. So we really tried to take this holistic approach, trying to marry the workforce and all these other factors, marketing, the execution of site visits. We've really tried to take all these into account whenever we come up with our holistic approach. Ultimately, we want to provide monetary assistance through the grant program, but there's so much more than that. We really want to think about it from not only from a return on investment, how can we invest these dollars to maximize the return for the Commonwealth? But we also want to think about how we can provide feedback and leverage this program. And kind of to that point, I'll point towards a funnel slide. We designed the program to mirror and mimic the corporate site selection process. So I'll talk about the corporate process first. We've got a lot of sites that kind of go into the funnel. We've got to figure out where we're going to go and visit sites. So after we get all these sites in through an RFI process, we'll filter and decide which sites we're going to go and visit. In the same way, the Kentucky PDI program is set up just like this. We have a large number of applicants, then we have to make a filtering cut, decide who we're going to go and give site visits to. We do an in-depth site visit on our corporate side, and then typically there's another filter mechanism where we talk about, who are going to be our finalists or our preferred site options. And these represent those that SSG would prioritize for grant funding, or kind of just saying across the state, these are what we think are probably some of the best sites to invest in from a return on investment standpoint. I'll tell you, in the corporate process, this filter is probably more heated discussion than this filter. And I think that the most important thing with this program, one thing that we really wanted to make sure we did was provide this critical feedback. Everybody that participates will get a deliverable that says, this is what we think the strengths are of your property. Here's some of the weaknesses, or at least perceived weaknesses. And here are some of the real challenges that we would prioritize kind of to address as you develop that property. And so out of this program, what we hope you get is kind of an action plan to say, okay, here are the things that we really should address first. And we're going to talk about it from a site perspective, from a workforce perspective, and from an execution of the site visit and RFI. What we're trying to do is make sure that anybody who participates has a greater chance of staying in that mix as long as possible on the corporate site selection process. And so that's really what we designed this program to do. Feel free, again, I know I'm going through this kind of quickly, feel free to chime in and ask any questions you may have. I want to talk about some PDI success stories. So this coming year will be our 3rd year, and so I wanted to highlight a few from each round. Hopkinsville had a groundbreaking ceremony where they are starting construction on a speculative building. You can see some site prep work going on in Elizabethtown with some infrastructure extensions and site prep. There was some upfit of corporate space at the UK Coldstream facility. This year, we're already in 2021, almost halfway through it, but it seems like it was just yesterday. Southwest One Industrial Park they're going to go for a pad ready site with some road construction over some wetland areas. So that was a great ad for this property. Eddyville, I'm very excited. We're going to talk about Eddyville in just a second again. They're going to do some build ready pad work in their existing industrial park to kind of expand this property. And then Tom Harnett in Logan County had recently acquired a portion of the property, and now he's going to use some funds to kind of assimilate and work on some site prep things to kind of make that property more cohesive and kind of round it out. So I'm excited for him that he's expanding that acreage there. So these are some of the types of projects that have been successful in the PDI program, and I just kind of wanted to highlight a few of those. Again, in addition to the grant dollars, we try to, really leverage the program to show you, how you can improve year over year. And some of these are examples of those. 2020, I'll tell you, was a year of a lot of uncertainty, from a corporate site selection perspective. COVID, it provided a lot of schedule uncertainty. I know that it probably, I'll watch Christina shake her head, probably had some headaches at the state funding level. So, coming out of 2020, as we looked back, we wanted to highlight some of the things that were just really positive. There were a few properties that just really kind of shone through the process. And so we were going to highlight those. I'll start up here in the upper left-hand corner, the RFI response process. Greer Industrial Park. Paula does a wonderful job of dotting all those T's or dotting all those I's and crossing all those T's to make sure that she has every single detail run down. And we really see that as a best practice to really hunting down all that information. She did a great job. Also really good on the follow-up, anticipating questions that we would have and going ahead and answering them ahead of time. Again, 2020, year of uncertainty, but it sure did bump up the importance of virtual site visits. And Brittany in Owensboro did a fantastic job. And so we gave her a superlative for the virtual site visit. She did a really great job of owning being the moderator. A lot of times that's one of the hardest jobs to do, whenever you've got a lot of different stakeholders and issues and things coming in, but she did a great job of bringing all the people together and being a great moderator. Eddyville Industrial Park. And I think if I'm not mistaken, Amanda's on here so she can chime in with her perspective, but we went in 2019 to Eddyville. She gave a wonderful, she'd only been there for probably 6 months or so, but gave a wonderful pitch on workforce. She and Chris Schwinden, I think, had a detailed discussion on, ways to even take that good workforce pitch and make it even better. And she really knocked our socks off this year. She actually got a local kind of film production firm to put together a workforce story, and story being the important word. She put together a narrative from the perspective of a student and kind of communicated it to a potential employer to say, this is what your workforce is going to look like in Eddyville. This is who our people are. This is what drives them. This is why we think it's smart that they would engage at the local technical college level. Just a really, really well done video. And it kind of made you feel like whenever you walked away, you know who Eddyville is and who they're not. They really own where they're at in the marketplace and what their value proposition is to potential clients. So that was one where we went back in 2020 and she had taken the year and really just kind of knocked our socks off on the improvement she had made in the meantime. We also did a great workforce visit in West Industrial Park for Logan County. They have an incredible technical college system, a really well done tour and kind of showcasing that area about how a rural area has the resources to accommodate some really advanced manufacturing. So these were some just really cool stories. This is why I love my job. I love being out in the field, and seeing some of these great successes was just a beautiful thing. So let's talk about changes for 2021. And these are where my PowerPoint slides get a little bit denser, so y'all stick with me. One of the big things that's really important to SSG is that we take feedback that we hear every year and we build on that. So this is our third year. Every year we're going to get better and better at this, but we are wanting to take some of the feedback that we heard and make some changes. So in 2021, there will be some changes, and I've kind of listed a few out here. The RFI process will have some additional upfront information that will be required. That's going to be more specific project details, design, kind of cost information. And so we'll have that, and that will really help kind of usher you through the KEDFA process quickly. So there'll be a little bit added information that will be needed, but we have extended the amount of time that you'll have to complete that RFI. So I'll show you where that's at in the process. We also are bringing back the $500 application fee that's payable to KAED. So that will be paid to Matt Tackett and his group. And that's just kind of making sure that the local community is committed to participating. The $500, is minimal, we think, but a lot of times it kind of requires a group of people to get together and say, yes, this is something that's worth investing in. Let's submit that and let's move ahead full steam. We're really putting an enormous emphasis on these eligibility requirements. You may have heard Christina mention it earlier. We really want to make sure that your requests for grant funds are aligned with KEDFA's requirements. These should be, the best way to put it is hard asset improvements, something that can be realized on a potential company's balance sheet, basically. So think about this in terms of physical improvements, and I'll have some examples on the following slides of what kind of falls into these categories. But I don't want you to feel like we're going to shut down at the end of today and then we go away and you have to figure this out on your own. We really want to be a resource. The cabinet has been phenomenal at kind of being collaborative and making themselves available to answer questions about eligibility. So between me and between the cabinet, we really want to be a resource. Please feel free to email us and we can help provide some feedback on what we think is going to be the best use of grant funds at your particular property, with your input included. Site visits, we're going to continue to put an emphasis on really making sure, obviously we need to accomplish what SSG needs to accomplish, and that's mainly gathering the information that we need from a site and from a workforce perspective. But we also want to take some time to really use this for how it may benefit your community, and that may be bringing in people from a chamber that don't normally participate, that don't quite understand the economic development process, or an elected official who may. And everybody, if there's any elected officials on here, I'm saying you're all very easy to work with, but sometimes it can be hard and challenging to understand what's pulling or what the key drivers are in the site selection process. If you've got somebody in your community that would benefit from peeking behind the curtain and coming and seeing how rigorous a site visit is, we welcome them to participate, and we want this to be really an educational tool for the whole state. So we welcome those key stakeholders to join. And finally, I've already mentioned it, but the schedule, we've provided more time in the RFI process to complete those additional kind of RFI requests. So I'm not going to read these bullet by bullet, and this will be available to you, but we're obviously doing our webinars now. We're going to distribute program applications and materials May 14th, and you used to have 5 weeks, now you have 8 weeks to complete this application. And so we hope that gives you sufficient time to kind of get your ducks in a row. We're certainly available to answer any questions. We do have this interim step of a letter of intent, and this is really built in with you in mind. We would love for you to kind of submit your application. Whenever you submit that application, we can kind of run it through the cabinet to make sure that it's aligned from a KEDFA eligibility standpoint, and really provide you with some upfront feedback. So that way, if you need to kind of tweak your application, we have time to do that before the deadline of June 12th. Again, we're happy to be a resource. Please over communicate if you want to. We're here to help. So I won't run through all the rest of these, but obviously we're going to be going on site visits in September, if not before. And then we'll be kind of clarifying questions and making our grant kind of recommendations and site prioritizations by October and announce those in November. Obviously, you still have to kind of go through the KEDFA process after that, but this is the schedule that we've laid out for 2021. If you haven't participated before and you're new to the program, you will receive from us a grant application material packet, an Excel file, and a letter of intent template. This will kind of outline the necessary information we need to understand eligibility, a lot of instructions in here on how to apply and how to put your best foot forward with that application. Let's see. The only other thing I'll mention, and I'll mention it during funding. We'll continue on so I don't duplicate. Site visits, we set these up as much as we can, like a virtual site visit. I'm sorry, like a corporate site visit. We will come, we will want to meet with your economic development folks. We will want to meet with your utility providers. If you have engineers engaged on the site development, we love to meet with those folks as well, although it's not required. We also want to meet with workforce stakeholders and understand what it's like to operate in your community and what assets are available from a workforce standpoint. And we'll obviously want to do a physical tour of the property and of the community. One thing that I'll mention, again, 2020 really kind of pushed the virtual site visit. I guess that, the virtual site visit's role in our process really bumped it up a level. If your community is still figuring out COVID protocols or you just want to give a virtual site visit a try, this is a great opportunity for a no pressure situation to give that virtual kind of platform a spin and see how it feels. We're happy to provide feedback. A virtual site visit is definitely an art and a science. It takes a lot of kind of preparation to make it flow smoothly. So if that's something that your community has wanted to do, but just hasn't had the real opportunity to do that, we're happy to provide that platform, and we would still come and do a physical tour of your property. So this is where I wanted to talk through a few funding kind of availability and kind of stipulations. This is where it gets really fun, where I get to go through these bullets. Funding is available. The cabinet has committed funds for 2021, and we're very excited about that. There is a $500,000 per applicant kind of limit on each property. So keep that in mind as you're kind of planning what funds you're going to request. And there's also a 50-50 local match required for the grant application. So make sure during that letter of intent process and during the application process, we will ask you to confirm that you are able to provide a 50-50 local match. And so that is an important part of this program. SSG, this is more schedule that we've kind of already gone over, so I'm not going to go too far through those. So let's talk some specifics around eligibility. And I think this helps give folks an idea on what they should go after and what they should request. Again, grant requests must be property specific. So you need to think of a specific in either industrial park or corporate facility that you want to make improvements at, and they should be fixed, hard, physical assets and improvements. So examples of these include infrastructure extensions or improvements, site prep work, road improvements, etc. The property must be publicly owned, and those grant projects must be completed by a third-party vendor rather than like in-kind services from a local utility partner, for example. And we really want to make sure that these grant projects have a substantial kind of design and kind of a lot of the legwork in place to make sure that they can be executed relatively soon after the grant recommendation is made and awarded. So things that are not eligible, and this is where I feel like we get the most confusion. So I hope folks will kind of tune in here. Since they need to be hard assets or physical improvements, these are some of the things that would not qualify. For example, property acquisition costs are not eligible at this time. Due diligence studies, so if you need to get a phase 1 or a geotech done, that's just not eligible through the kind of legal vehicle that we have to operate in through KEDFA. Purchasing wetland mitigation credits, master planning, infrastructure, for example, if there's like a wastewater treatment plant that needs master capacity added, that's not eligible. It needs to be more site-specific stuff like a wastewater line extension to a particular property. A few of these others are listed. Another one that's kind of caused a few headaches is folks applying in a TIF district, and important clarification. It's okay if you have a local TIF district. It is not okay if it's a state, I don't know if the vernacular is right, Christina, but a state sponsored TIF district.
Right.
So that's just a few bullets. I know not the funnest slide in the world, but we wanted to make sure it's a very important one. So we wanted to make sure we covered it. Anything else you wanted to kind of comment on from, oh, we just got a great question. Are engineering design cost eligible? So I don't know if Christina, if you want to answer that, or if Sarah's on. I'll know from a very high level, it has to be a certain percentage of the total overall physical, project. Do you want to comment on that, or maybe is Sarah? I don't know.
Sarah and Katie are on to put
oh good and
to put answers in the chat, and we'll be doing so. But I think that they can be as part of a larger project cost. But I'll let them put in the exact answer. And I did want to say too, because we had this come up in round 2, properties must be publicly owned, and option is not eligible. So while we think having an option on a property is wonderful and, a really good first step, and really beneficial in a lot of ways, we are still not able to fund projects if it's not owned. So we did have that come up. So I wanted to say that too.
Yeah. And another, I think, really important point too, as we're hearing back from them, another really important point is like, this is very specific to funding eligibility. You are still welcome to participate in the program, to receive the feedback, to go through the program. I think some communities are out there, and they don't, you might not be able to get a swing at the plate often. And so if you really want to hone your skills and get ready, and you have the capacity to go through the program, it can be a great way to get your ducks in order, especially on like very raw properties that are a little bit more upstream. So just because you're not technically eligible, for a grant, for the grant through the KEDFA process, SSG welcomes you to participate, but just wanted you to be aware of the funding requirements. So, and we think that feedback is important. And from what I've heard, people really value it, but just kind of wanted to make that known. I have not heard back on the design cost. We can certainly, I'll make a note to, that is just down in the weeds beyond my knowledge of what that percentage is, but I know that it has to be less than a certain percentage of the project. So I'll make a note on that.
Yes, Katie's responded as a percentage of total cost, but I don't know an exact percent. So we'll follow up.
Okay, very good. Good question. What are the requirements and restrictions for matching funds? Can we use Fed stimulus funds as a match? Again, that is a little bit beyond my depth on the legalese of KEDFA's requirements. I don't know if Commissioner Smith has an option for that, but we will. She says no other state agency funds may be used as a match, but federal funds may be eligible. Thank you. Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Very good. Let's see if I had anything else that we wanted to cover. That was all the content that I had to cover. These are awesome questions and happy to field any more. We've got one question on just restating the TIF question. Yes, local TIF areas are eligible. And my vernacular is probably off, but the state sponsored or the state level TIFs are not eligible. Thank you for your question. Any other questions? And if y'all are lying awake at night and you think of a random question, you just send it on over and we'll be happy to answer it. This is not last call for questions. We expect this to be a collaborative process, and everybody in Kentucky has been so great to work with. And I feel like I've really, been able to develop a lot of relationships across the Commonwealth. So I'm excited to get some new properties in the mix. We really encourage you to, submit, and even if you're not eligible, we're happy to work with you, and happy to answer any other questions. Anything else out there in the Zoom world?
No, I'll just echo that. We want to spend all of the money that we have committed to this round. And that's why you're going to see us so early on in the process, really stressing, look, the program that we're using to fund these wasn't designed for this. So we have some things that we are having to work around and, being flexible where we can. So we appreciate, the understanding and patience on that. But we want to get engaged early so we can tell you up front if it would be eligible or not, giving you a chance to pivot, and so that there are no surprises in the end. So please feel free, call Beth, myself, Katie, Sarah with the cabinet, Commissioner Taylor, and we're happy to answer those questions.
And great point from Matt Tackett. We will be also doing a session at the KAED conference on May 19th. So we'll be coming to you virtual there. And, I think honestly,